Every picture tells a story. But what if that story is about to end in tragedy? The images you're about to see capture the final moments of celebrities, right before they took their last breaths. Some had no idea what was coming, while others seemed to sense their fate. Let's dive in. 10. Garry Shandling was a comedian, actor, and writer, best known for his work on The Larry Sanders Show and It's Garry Shandling's Show. He was one of the comedians who changed how people saw TV comedy, making it feel more natural and personal. He was funny, sharp, and deeply respected in the comedy world. Just days before he died, he was seen in a photo with his friend Kathy Griffin, who shared the picture on Twitter. They looked happy, just enjoying a normal moment together. Shandling passed away on March the 24th, 2016, at the age of 66. He had been dealing with some serious health issues, though many people didn't know about them. One of those conditions was hyperparathyroidism, which can cause all sorts of problems like high blood pressure, kidney stones, and even heart issues. He also had blood clots in his legs, which is always dangerous because they can travel to the lungs. He had been in Hawaii for dental surgery and wasn't feeling well. He had complained about leg pain and trouble breathing, both of which are signs of blood clots. Unfortunately, on that day, he suddenly collapsed at home. When paramedics arrived, he was unconscious. They rushed him to St. John's Health Center in Santa Monica, but it was too late. He had suffered a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot that had moved to his lungs, and that's what ultimately caused his death. Shandling didn't have any close family, so his estate went to his best friend and lawyer, Bill Isaacson. However, the real impact of his legacy came later. In 2019, a huge part of his wealth, $15.2 million, was donated to medical research at UCLA. The money was used to create research funds for endocrine surgery, infectious diseases, and pancreatic diseases, as well as a learning studio in his name. Garry Shandling's last photo captured him smiling, but Mahatma Gandhi never had that chance. His final moments were anything but peaceful. 9th, Mahatma Gandhi was one of the most important figures India has ever produced. He was a leader who fought for India's independence from British rule, but he did so in a unique way, without violence. He believed in peace, unity, and standing up for what's right without hurting others. Because of this, he inspired millions of people not just in India, but all over the world. On January 30th, 1948, Gandhi was walking through a crowd at Birla House in Delhi. He was on his way to a prayer meeting when a man named Nathuram Godse stepped forward, pulled out a pistol, and shot him 3 times in the chest. This was the last moment Gandhi was ever seen alive in public. Some say he died instantly. Others say he was carried inside Birla House, where he passed away about 30 minutes later, while a family member read verses from Hindu scriptures. Either way, his death was a shock to the entire nation. India's Prime Minister at the time, Jawaharlal Nehru, spoke to the country through the radio. His words captured the deep loss that people felt. Gandhi had spent his life trying to bring people together, yet he was killed by one of his own countrymen, a Hindu nationalist who disagreed with his ideas. Godse didn't try to run away after the shooting. He was caught immediately, along with others who were part of the conspiracy. In court, the trial lasted 8 months. In the end, 8 men were convicted, and 2, Godse and his accomplice Narayan Apte, were sentenced to death. Gandhi's death was heartbreaking, but just a few years later, another visionary who shaped our world passed away too. 8. Albert Einstein was one of the greatest minds in history. He completely changed how we understand the universe with his theories. But despite being a genius, he was also just a regular man in many ways. He loved playing the violin, took long walks, and was often seen with his messy hair. One of the last photos of Einstein was taken in Princeton, New Jersey in March 1955. Just a month later, on April 18, 1955, he passed away at the age of 76. His death was caused by an abdominal aortic aneurysm, a condition where the biggest artery in the body weakens and suddenly bursts, leading to severe internal bleeding. In his final days, Einstein was still working. He was writing a speech for a national TV address about Israel's 7th anniversary. But as he sat at his desk, he suddenly felt intense pain in his chest and stomach. His artery had torn, and in those days, surgery for this condition was extremely risky. Today, doctors can replace the damaged artery with an artificial one, but back then, the surgery was almost as dangerous as doing nothing. Even though doctors offered surgery, Einstein refused. He accepted that his time had come, saying, "I want to go when I want to go. It is tasteless to prolong life artificially. I have done my share. It is time to go." He passed away soon after. Einstein was a heavy pipe smoker, often surrounded by a cloud of smoke. He even picked up cigarette butts from the ground to reuse the tobacco. At the time, people didn't fully understand the dangers of smoking, and Einstein believed it helped him think more calmly. It's possible that his smoking made his aneurysm worse. After his death, his brain became a topic of curiosity. The pathologist who did his autopsy, Thomas Harvey, took Einstein's brain, cut it into pieces, and studied it for years, trying to figure out the secret of his genius. In the end, scientists found that his brain was different in some ways, but they still couldn't fully explain how his mind worked. Einstein's passing was unexpected, but at least he lived into his 70s. Robert Kennedy, on the other hand, never got that chance. 7. Robert F. Kennedy was a man who believed in justice, equality, and hope. He was the younger brother of President John F. Kennedy, and after his brother's assassination, he carried on the family's legacy. As a senator and presidential candidate, he fought for civil rights, ending poverty and bringing people together. Many saw him as the man who could heal America during a very troubled time. His last photo was taken just after he was shot at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles on June 5, 1968. In the image, Kennedy is lying on the ground, bleeding, with a young busboy, Juan Romero, cradling his head and placing a rosary in his hand. It was a tragic end to a hopeful night. Earlier that evening, Kennedy had just won the California Democratic primary, a crucial step in his journey to the presidency. He gave a victory speech to a cheering crowd in the hotel's ballroom, ending with the words, "So, my thanks to all of you, and on to Chicago, and let's win there." But instead of heading straight to more supporters, his team decided to take a shortcut through the hotel kitchen. As he made his way through the crowded pantry, shaking hands with hotel workers and supporters, a 24-year-old man named Sirhan Sirhan suddenly stepped forward. Without warning, he pulled out a gun and fired multiple shots at Kennedy at point-blank range. The room erupted into chaos. People screamed, ducked, and tried to stop the shooter. Some tackled Sirhan, but he kept pulling the trigger, injuring 5 other people before he was finally restrained. Kennedy collapsed onto the floor, his head resting on Romero's hands. In those final moments, he asked, "Is everybody okay?" Even as he lay there, gravely wounded, he was thinking about others. Romero reassured him. "Yes, everybody's okay." Kennedy then whispered, "Everything's going to be okay," before losing consciousness. He was rushed to the hospital, but the damage was too severe. He died in the early hours of June 6, 1968. He was just 42 years old. Kennedy's death was quite tragic, but Amy Winehouse's story will leave you speechless. 6. Amy Winehouse was a once-in-a-generation talent. Her deep, soulful voice and raw, emotional lyrics made her one of the most unforgettable singers of her time. But behind her success, she struggled with addiction and personal battles that she couldn't escape. Her last photo was taken in London on July 12, 2011. Less than 2 weeks later, on July 23rd, she was found dead in her home. She was only 27. In the days leading up to her death, those around her noticed she wasn't quite herself. Her bodyguard, who had been with her for 3 days, saw that she had been drinking but didn't seem too worried. Her mother also said Amy had seemed out of it when she last saw her. Despite this, Amy had visited her doctor for a routine checkup, and there were no signs that anything was seriously wrong. That same day, she called her doctor and admitted she was struggling with sobriety, saying, "I don't want to die." It was one of the last things she ever said. The night before she passed, Amy was at home, drinking and watching old videos of her performances. She was laughing and listening to music, seemingly enjoying herself. At 10 a.m. the next morning, her bodyguard checked on her and saw her lying on her bed. Since Amy often slept late, he didn't think much of it. But when he looked again after 3 p.m., she was in the exact same position. This time, he realized something was very wrong. She wasn't breathing, and there was no pulse. Paramedics arrived minutes later, but it was too late. Amy Winehouse was pronounced dead at the scene. She had drunk so much alcohol that her body simply couldn't handle it. The toxicology report later revealed her blood alcohol level was more than 5 times the legal driving limit. The official cause of death was ruled as alcohol poisoning, or, as the coroner put it, death by misadventure. Her passing shocked the world, and people immediately speculated that drugs had played a role. But no illegal substances were found in her system. Some, including her brother, believed her long battle with bulimia had weakened her body and made her more vulnerable. Amy was laid to rest on July 26, 2011, in a private funeral attended by her family and close friends. Her father gave a heartbreaking eulogy, ending with the words, "Good night, my angel, sleep tight." Decades ago, the world lost another remarkable woman, Amelia Earhart, and the mystery of her disappearance still baffles me till date. 5. Amelia Earhart was a fearless and determined woman who changed aviation history. She wasn't just any pilot. She was a record breaker, a pioneer, and a symbol of courage. At a time when people believed flying was only for men, she proved them wrong, setting records and inspiring countless others. She was the first woman to fly alone across the Atlantic Ocean, a feat that made her a global icon. The last known photo of Amelia was taken as she packed for her final flight in 1937. She was attempting to fly around the world, something no woman had ever done before. On June 1st, she and her navigator, Fred Noonan, took off from Oakland, California. Their journey was long and challenging, but after almost a month, they had successfully traveled 22,000 miles. They landed in Lae, New Guinea, with only 7,000 miles left to complete their historic trip. The next part of the journey was one of the most difficult. They had to fly 2,500 miles across the Pacific Ocean to a tiny island called Howland Island to refuel. On July 2nd, they took off from Lae, but something went terribly wrong. Bad weather, radio problems, and low fuel made the trip incredibly dangerous. The U.S. Coast Guard ship near Howland tried to communicate with them, but the messages were unclear. The last thing heard from Amelia was that she was running low on fuel and trying to find the island. Then, silence. A massive search began immediately. It became the most expensive air and sea search in American history at the time. But there was no sign of Amelia, Fred, or their plane. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. 2 years later, on January 5, 1939, Amelia Earhart was officially declared dead. The official explanation is that she and Noonan ran out of fuel and crashed into the Pacific Ocean. But because no wreckage was found, many theories have emerged over the years. Some believe she was captured by the Japanese, while others think she survived the crash and lived on a deserted island. There's even evidence of tools and plane wreckage on Nikumaroro Island that could be linked to her. No one knows for sure what happened to Amelia Earhart. Her story might be a sad one, but it is nothing compared to what happened to George Harrison. 4. George Harrison was one of the most influential musicians of all time. He was the lead guitarist of the Beatles, the legendary band that changed music forever. George wasn't just a great musician. He was also deeply spiritual, funny, and kind. He was often overshadowed by John Lennon and Paul McCartney, but his songwriting and guitar skills played a huge role in the Beatles' success. The last known photo of George was taken for Jools Holland's album booklet, Small World, Big Band, in 2001. At the time, George was battling cancer, but he still managed to smile for the camera. His illness had started years earlier, and despite treatments, it kept coming back. Sadly, on November 29, 2001, George passed away at a friend's home in Los Angeles. He was 58 years old. George's wife, Olivia, and his son, Donnie, were by his side when he took his final breath. According to his family, he passed away peacefully, unafraid of death. Spirituality was a big part of George's life, and he believed that searching for God was more important than anything else. Even in his last moments, he held on to that belief. His battle with cancer had been long and difficult. In 1997, doctors found a lump on his neck, which turned out to be cancer. George himself admitted that years of smoking likely caused it. He quit smoking for a while, but later started again. The cancer spread to his lungs and later to his brain. Even while facing his illness, George remained private, asking fans not to worry about his health. His death marked the end of an era. With John Lennon already gone, only Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr remained from the Beatles. Paul described George as his baby brother and called him a brave man with a great sense of humor. George's death shattered hearts, but it wasn't the first time the music world lost an icon. Keith Moon met a tragic end too. 3. Keith Moon was the drummer for The Who, one of the biggest rock bands of all time. He was known for his wild energy, both on and off stage, but by the late 1970s, that energy was running out. His drumming had slowed down, and his body was struggling from years of alcohol and drug use. His last known photo was taken on September 6, 1978. He was at a party for the Buddy Holly Story, a film about the famous rock musician. Paul and Linda McCartney were there too. That night, Moon had dinner with them, then went home to his London apartment with his girlfriend, Annette Walter Lax. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. Keith Moon had been trying to quit drinking. He was taking a drug called Heminevrin to help with alcohol withdrawal, but it was a dangerous choice. The drug was meant to be used under medical supervision because it could be addictive and even deadly if mixed with alcohol. His doctor, who didn't fully understand Moon's lifestyle, gave him a bottle of 100 pills, telling him to take only 3 a day. That night, after watching a horror movie, Moon asked Annette to cook him some lamb cutlets, his favorite meal. When she refused, he snapped, "If you don't like it, you can fuck off." Those were his last words. He then took more Heminevrin pills and went to bed. The next day, Annette checked on him in the afternoon and found him unresponsive. Keith Moon was dead at 32 years old. There were 32 pills in his system. 6 had been digested, enough to kill him, while the other 26 remained undigested. If you thought Keith Moon's death was shocking, just wait until you hear about Heath Ledger, who died a similar way. 2. Heath Ledger was one of the most talented actors of his generation. He starred in movies like Brokeback Mountain and The Dark Knight, where he played the Joker in a way that people still talk about today. But behind the scenes, he was struggling. He had trouble sleeping, was dealing with a lot of stress, and was taking different medications to help him cope. The last known photo of Ledger was taken during the filming of The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, a movie that would be released after his death. No one knew at the time that it would be his final role. On January 22, 2008, Heath Ledger was found unresponsive in his New York apartment. His housekeeper and massage therapist discovered him lying face down in bed. At first, his massage therapist, Diana Wolozin, thought he was just sleeping. But when she realized something was wrong, she tried to wake him up. When he didn't respond, she called actress Mary-Kate Olsen, a close friend of Ledger's, before finally dialing 911. Emergency responders arrived minutes later, but it was too late. Heath Ledger was pronounced dead at just 28 years old. An autopsy later revealed that Ledger had died from an accidental overdose of prescription medications. His body had a mix of painkillers, anti-anxiety drugs, and sleeping pills, including oxycodone, hydrocodone, diazepam, temazepam, alprazolam, and doxylamine. Experts believe that if even just 2 of those drugs had been left out, he might have survived. Some also think that a chest infection he had at the time may have made things worse. After his death, there were many questions about how he got the medications. A federal investigation cleared 2 doctors of any wrongdoing, but it was never officially determined where he got the drugs that caused his overdose. His passing was a shock to the world. Just months later, The Dark Knight was released, and his portrayal of the Joker was praised as one of the best performances in film history. He would go on to win an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, making him only the 2nd actor to win an Oscar posthumously. Ledger's death was heartbreaking, but it didn't shake the world the way Abraham Lincoln's assassination did. 1. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States and one of the most important figures in American history. He led the country during the Civil War and helped end slavery. By the time this last photo of him was taken in March 1865, he had already been through so much. The war was almost over and the country was beginning to heal. But just a month later, something tragic happened. On April 14, 1865, Lincoln decided to go to Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., to watch a play called Our American Cousin. He went with his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, and some friends. The war had just ended, and people were in a celebratory mood. Lincoln, too, must have been relieved that the country was finally coming back together. But little did he know that this night would be his last. John Wilkes Booth, a famous actor and a supporter of the Confederacy, was angry that Lincoln had won the war and abolished slavery. He planned to kill the president as an act of revenge. During the play, Booth sneaked into Lincoln's private box and shot him in the back of the head. Chaos erupted in the theater. People screamed, and Mary Todd Lincoln was in shock. Booth jumped onto the stage, shouted something, and ran away before anyone could catch him. Lincoln was still alive, but unconscious. People carried him across the street to a boarding house where doctors tried to save him. His friends and government officials, including Senator Charles Sumner, gathered around, hoping for a miracle. But there was nothing they could do. Lincoln never woke up, and at 7:22 a.m. on April 15, 1865, he passed away. He was 56 years old. News of his death spread quickly. Just days earlier, people had been celebrating the Union's victory in the Civil War. Now, the streets of Washington were filled with mourners. His body was placed in the Capitol's rotunda, where thousands of people came to pay their respects. Later, a long funeral procession took him back to his home state of Illinois, where he was finally laid to rest.